One of the things I love about comics is that people underestimate them. Like, oh, it's just a comic book. Ha ha, speaks symbolically. My comics are about very deep things. And if you interact with them, you understand that they are teaching you things about the world. I've been drawing since I was about 4 or 5, I'm thinking, something like that. I was always an avid reader. I love knowledge, I love stories, just from early on. My mom is still like an avid reader. You know, she's the one that got me hooked on comics and horror movies and science fiction stories and Edgar Allan Poe and Stephen King, stuff I shouldn't be reading, probably. You know, mythology, you know, from various backgrounds and stuff. I was a sponge, like for real sponge, you know, and, you know, I grew up in the sticks of the sticks. I thought, you know, Florida is already a small agrarian space, but I grew up in like the outskirts of even that town, right? So I had nothing but my imagination and crickets. So yeah, I've always been a dreamer and a storyteller, you know, that kind of thing from the get-go. And so I knew that. I think one of the biggest encumbrances for me or obstacles for me was the fact that I didn't have the education to understand that I was surrounded by artists. I didn't realize at the time that my mother, because she makes dresses and quilts, is an artist. I didn't realize that my cousin Eula is an artist because she makes quilts. I didn't think about my aunt who did like door decorations as an artist because I had a very limited view of what art is. But now I realize like, oh, I was surrounded by artists, you know? But you have to understand, you know, like, oh, this is an art form, this is craft, this is like technique. I didn't know that then, right? My Uncle Willie, God rest him, he used to draw a lot. He would draw for me, right? And then one time he came home tired. He was like super talented, right? He said, draw it yourself, you know? And I was like, all right, I will, yeah, you know? Yes. You know what I'm saying? And so now, you know, I just didn't give up doing that. I have to say, like, one of the things I found distress in thinking back, you know, in high school and stuff like that, I recently did a visit to Maurice Broaddus's library. He's a librarian. He's a really famous, like, science fiction writer, black man, right, out of Indianapolis, right? He brought me in to speak to his kids at his library. And I realized while I was doing my talks that nobody came to visit us in Florida, Mississippi, right? No one came to say like, hey, you can be a nurse. Hey, you can be an engineer. No one came to visit us. You know, the recruiters came. Recruiters came to visit us, which is why I ended up in the Army at first, right, at 17. Because I didn't see a way, you know, I couldn't see the path, right? Luckily I was injured in the military. I got a scholarship to Jackson State, and my drill sergeants were telling me I should be in the art school. My drill sergeants, you know, they were like, Jennings, why are you here? I was doing like murals in the barracks. I was actually making artwork for their wives. I was doing like artwork for the privates that was like, hey Jennings, can you draw me a heart for my wife? You know, seriously. And they were like, I remember his name, I never knew his name. His first name was Sergeant. Sergeant Ramirez. He was like, I used to be an artist. He taught me how to do street murals and stuff in the barracks, you know? And then I had my accident and I never see these people again, right? So I took that as a sign that I should be an art major, and I didn't know how I was gonna make it, but I knew that I was born an artist. I wasn't ready for like how amazing and beautiful this space is. I had never heard of the Max before, and I don't know, I mean, I've always been proud to be from the state of Mississippi, but it felt like I was floating. You know, I was like, this is incredible. I was like, what? And I get to be here in this space? Everybody's been so kind and like so generous, you know? And yeah, it was incredible, man. And so I feel like right now, like I'm sitting in my brain. You know what I'm saying? This is weird. That's what it feels like. It's a very surreal feeling to actually like be centered in your process as an artist, you know? And so I'm showing you things. It's almost like my creative underbelly, you know, since things that are not finished, you know? But I want to show through like uncovering the process. I'm very process oriented, and I think the process is part of the problem solving aspects of it. So yeah, so having a show like this in my home state, just the fact that three of my best friends from my hometown came to see me was just like, what? You know, people I've known for like 40 years. It's crazy, beautiful, you know? And I couldn't get that in New York. I couldn't get that in DC, right? So yeah, I am extremely excited about this show. I hope it inspires people. Just the fact that I got a chance to talk to kids who want to be comic book artists and stuff, this is exactly why we did it, you know? Because I wasn't supposed to actually be able to do the things that I do, But it's just because I'm stubborn and I had the grace of the ancestors and God to get here, right? So yeah, so I'm extremely stoked. So recently, I would say that I'm probably one of the predominant Afrofuturist scholars in the country, probably in the world, right? And that's not being hyperbolic, So I actually helped build some of the ways that people see Afrofuturism over the last decade or so, right? But it wasn't until I had a kid that I became a for real Afrofuturist, Like 7 years ago, I became a staunch Afrofuturist. I understood like, oh, I would rip this world in half for him, right? So I think those aspects of the work, mean so much to me that it's really about living the best life you can and leaving behind something to study, an archive or an artifact, that you can carry forward. I'm very serious about that. Mediums, comics, television, everything, they were never intended for Black people to be seen, right? So the fact that we are here is miraculous. I was at Harvard, actually. I was a Harvard fellow with Skip Gates, actually, at the NOS, as a NOS fellow, right, for the hip hop archive there, right? So I created a space called the Cybertrap, right? Futuristic Mississippi, right? After a massive climate change event, right? And Jackson becomes like a mega city, right? So I'm already like imagining what that space could look like. I used it as a way to talk about climate change, right? And he also talked about like, these futuristic spaces and how we struggle against them, whatever. And also too, like the different like technologies that are always trying to keep us bound, right? I think that our history has always been about struggle, against all odds. We're very powerful people because of that, One of these days I hope to rest, because even our ancestors are still working, they don't, they have to put their hands on us. One of these days, hopefully they'll get a chance to chill, So I think for me, a futuristic Mississippi would be one of hope, bounty, and a lack of like, having to struggle, as much. And to actually embrace ourselves as a whole people, There's so many obstacles to us staying the path, a lot of distractions, systemically, internally, we're all battling a lot of things. You have to be able to listen to that light inside yourself, through meditation, maybe even like trying to find like-minded individuals. It's a little bit easier now, like you said, because of the internet and stuff like that sometimes, but you actually have to be able to listen to that voice inside yourself, And actually, I'm gonna go back to kids, right? I know we know about kids, but the thing that you have to understand is like all of us have a little kid inside of us. That little kid that wanted to be a firefighter, that little kid that wanted to be a tiger, the little kid that wanted to be, astronaut, that kid's still up in there, but it's all this stuff on top of them, And so for me, I've always wanted to be a comic book artist, when I was like 10, 11, like that. And I want people to understand, like, you have to listen to that voice inside you. And I was like, it's so loud to me now, I think the more that you declutter, it's definite, I want them to see possibility. I want them to understand that they can do this too. And that the world that we live in was built for them to, there's some parts of it are like cages, like little boxes that they give you, I think the irony though with comics is that you put stories in little boxes that could liberate you, right? That's what I love about it. One of the things I love about comics is that people underestimate them. Like, oh, it's just a comic book. Ha-ha, speaks symbolically. My comics are about very deep things. And if you interact with them, you understand that they are teaching you things about the world, So I'm hoping that people live here, they leave here inspired, I hope that they, interact with some of the materials that I've given, and make their own worlds, because they can.